regulate it any way you want to. Mississippi didn't end their alcohol prohibition until around 1970. Okay, it was still prohibited. You still have dry counties in some area. Those are local things to do. What we're trying to do is get the federal government out of the prohibition business and let the law enforcement go back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's protecting people from each other. You know, 20 years of police work, working in the town of Tonawanda, community of about 80,000 people. I remember two incidents. One was a father who found out that his son had committed a rape, and he turned his son into the police for that rape. Another one was a mother who found out that her son was committing burglaries, and she turned her son in for committing burglaries. Not once in 20 years did a parent ever turn their child in for drugs. Not once. And I can't believe that out of 80,000 people, some mother or father didn't find in the sock drawer a little baggie with something in it. But when it was their child, the last thought in the world was to turn this over to the police. They found other ways to deal with that problem. And we as a society should find other ways. We have 450,000 deaths a year. It used to be, it's probably down a little bit due to tobacco. 150,000 deaths a year due to alcohol. Now, my question is, when you look at all the illegal drugs and you only have 30,000 deaths a year from all illegal drugs combined, the question is, if prohibition is such a good idea, why don't we bring back alcohol prohibition and prohibit tobacco? If it's a good idea, let's do it with all the things we don't like. And the reality is, when I say that to people, they look at me and say, well, that doesn't work. And that's absolutely right. Prohibition doesn't work.
Lydia has a question for you.
Mr. Chris, we've gotten a lot of feedback in from a lot of viewers.
I am sure we have.
I can't imagine watching what you have to say and people not writing in about it. Bud wrote in, there are places in Asia that have no drugs. They execute people who sell, use, or manufacture drugs. Extreme, but effective. We have one more comment. Well, we have several comments, but this one I'm going to read. Just from the legalization and taxation of marijuana in the smoking form only, not paper, clothing, fuels, etc., the profit after savings from anti-marijuana propaganda, courts, and prosecution, as well as regulation in the U.S. as a whole, would profit in upwards of $42 million annually. Can you speak to that?
Well, absolutely. That's what we're talking about. We are spending $70 billion a year in this country trying to win this drug war. We could revert that to using that in our prison systems, in the treatment community. We can spend that money other ways. Plus, if we legalize it, I'm sure we're going to tax it. In America, we're not going to tax it? Of course we're going to tax it. We're going to generate income from it. Plus, we'll create jobs. Plus, we'll bring the hemp industry back, which was also outlawed in the 1930s when they outlawed marijuana. And the hemp industry is a very strong industry. And when you mention other countries, I had a guy come up to me after a Rotary meeting a couple of years ago and he said to me, well, you know what they do in Saudi Arabia if they catch you with drugs? And I said, yeah, and they take you down to the town square and they chop your head off. And he said smugly, yeah, that's right. And I answered him with two answers. One was, call me crazy, but when I think of countries I want America to be more like, Saudi Arabia is not one of the first ones that pops into my head. And two, you know what they do every year in Saudi Arabia when they catch people with drugs? They take them down to the town square and they chop their head off. And you know why they do it every year? Because it doesn't work. If it worked, the rest of the people see that head rolling through the courtyard, that'd be the end of the drug problem. But even that doesn't work. People choose to do this. The first attempt at prohibition that we have any historical record of started with these words: do not eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Whoa.
It was in the Garden of Eden, and the reason why it didn't work is told you in Genesis, and it's because the Creator, after creating the two people, granted them free will.
Lydia,
and that's what we're trying to outlaw.
Lydia has one more quick question before we go to the break.
Biblical on that one, but that's okay. Pete wrote in, he said, how much tax revenue would this actually generate? If it was legalized, people would grow their own. Presumably, employers would still be permitted to drug test employees, cutting down job opportunities for those who take advantage of this. The police would need to acquire equipment to determine if drivers were under the influence of pot when pulled over. There's also the issue of secondhand smoke. It can make those around you high. Can you speak to that quickly? We don't have much time.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff there, but obviously we have driving while intoxicated by drug laws now, so that's not a problem. We have the secondhand smoke thing. We're dealing with that with tobacco by regulating where people can use it and so on and so forth, so that's not the problem. What was the first one you said on there?
If it was legalized, people could grow their own and employers would still have to
right.
broadcast.
And I know that everybody listening to me today, after they get done watching this show, will go outside and tend their tomato garden, right? You can grow your own tomatoes. You don't have to buy them from anybody. But you know what? The vast majority of us don't want to do that, so we'd much rather buy them at the store. Let's be honest about this. You can make your own alcohol, too. Very few people do it. That is not the situation. This will create an economy. It will get law enforcement out of this work and let us focus on pedophiles, people that are robbing from people, people that are harming other people, instead of going after people that are doing what they choose to do.
Peter Crist, law enforcement against prohibition. Wow. Thanks so much for coming on Two Sides. We will definitely have you back, that's for sure.
Absolutely.